but I have seen all the members. Obviously, you're here, Bill, Keith. I saw come on, Wallace, Andy, and Michelle. So, Ashley, we're ready to start if you are.
That sounds perfect. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Saw a thumbs up from Clint. All right. So welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to see everybody. And it's nice to, instead of just hearing your voice, to hear and hear your voice. So I want to call the 971st meeting of the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy to order. And I'd like to start out by reading the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest and appearance of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before the board today?
No.
So please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. All right, Jay, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, everybody, I know we have made Michelle's introduction virtually, but I am delighted to officially introduce Michelle Johnson Corvin as the newest public member of the Board of Pharmacy. And we're especially lucky with Michelle's appointment, because she's a really terrific person that a lot of us who've been on staff, or Wallace, who was on the board at the time, we got to know Michelle back in 2007, but Michelle comes with a particular advantage, I think, as a public member, and that is that she has been involved in the profession of pharmacy all of her life. Michelle's father, John Johnson, owned and operated Hamlin Drug Company in Raleigh for, gosh, Michelle, was it well over 50 years. And in 2007, we were able to get to know Michelle and Mr. Johnson and the whole family in celebrating Hamlin Drug's 100th anniversary of operation. And Hamlin Drug was the oldest African-American owned pharmacy in the state. So Michelle comes to us as a public member, ready to hit the ground running. And Michelle, we are delighted to have you. I'm certainly sorry that the circumstances are what they are, that your first meeting is virtual. And I know that's a little bit awkward, but we're delighted to have you, Michelle. Welcome aboard. And I know I speak for all of the staff and all the members that we look very much forward to working with you over the next 5 years on the Board of Pharmacy.
Well, Jay, thank you very, very kindly. I cannot begin to tell you how honored and humbled I am. And you're right, this is absolutely a full circle moment. I probably started working in my dad's pharmacy before. I probably shouldn't tell, maybe that child labor law, but I was very, very young when I started working in the pharmacy. So this is a full circle moment, and I do appreciate everyone reaching out and welcoming me. And I am. I'm ready to hit the ground running. I'm ready to learn as much as I can and to be of service, continue to be of service to my community. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Michelle. And I do want the other board members know, and senior staff knowing that all of the other board members can remember when they first came onto the board, we would host the new member here so that you can meet all the senior staff at the board and talk about what we do in the different departments and the like. And so, Michelle, as I mentioned to you, between now and the July meeting, we'll work with you to get some dates and some times that we can do a version of that for you, at least virtually, so you can find out more about specifically how we do things here. And then, of course, when we get to the retreat in September, there'll be all the usual and sundry statutory training and the like. So.
Okay. I look forward to it. And once again, I really am honored to be here. So thank you all.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, Michelle, congratulations. We're super excited you're a part of our team, and I can't wait to meet you in person. I'm glad that I finally can see you, but I can't wait to meet you in person. So congratulations again. And I know I speak for the entire board. We're thrilled that you're part of our team. So.
Thank you very much. And I do look forward to meeting everybody in person once we get beyond this. So thank you again.
All right, just checking in to see if everybody has read over the meeting minutes from May and if there's any questions about that.
Log back in.
And Jay, I'm not able to see everybody's faces. I've gotten mainly the people from the board that I can see their screen. So I'm assuming that you'll let me know if somebody is raising their hand or speaking up.
Yeah, certainly will. Or if anybody's got any of the members have any question or comment on the minutes, do feel free to just go ahead and speak right up.
Okay, if there are no questions or comments on the May 2020 meetings, do we need to vote to? We
do.
Okay.
We could have a motion to approve those meetings would be great.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the May 2020 meetings?
Bill Mixon makes the motion to approve.
A second?
Andy Bowman will second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, well, let's do, per Clint's instruction, if you want, Ashley, I'll do do a roll call.
Okay.
We get the vote that way. So the motion has been made by Mr. Mixon, seconded by Dr. Bowman to approve the minutes of the May 2020 meeting. There being no further discussion, we'll call for vote on that. Ashley Duggins.
Aye.
Bill Mixon.
Aye.
Keith Vance. Keith, you might be on mute. We'll come back to Keith. Wallace Nelson.
Aye.
Oh, got you, Keith. Wallace.
I've got some issues. I don't know if you can hear me okay, but I'm hearing about 25% of what's being said. I guess I need to back out and back in.
Yeah, we can hear you, Wallace.
Yeah, I think it's bandwidth.
Yeah, but we can hear you. Andy?
Yes. Well, I vote for the motion, but I'm going
to. Got you, Wallace. And Michelle.
Am I allowed to vote?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yep.
Yes. Then,
and I should have made that clear, Michelle. There are some boards where the public members have some different voting capacity, but as a public member of the Board of Pharmacy, you vote and participate fully in each and every decision the board makes.
Okay.
That, Madam President, that's a unanimous motion or unanimous approval of the motion. So that motion carries and the minutes are approved.
Madam President, may I interrupt at this point and ask a question primarily of Antoine? Can we be on this meeting and view the agenda and the tab simultaneously?
You would actually have to have a second monitor to do that.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's why I've got my command post set up in here.
All right, Jay, I'll hand it over to you to go over the COVID-19 matters.
Thank you, Madam President. So each of you've got the memo behind.
I heard what sounded like Andy playing the banjo, and then Chewbacca started speaking.
Yeah, Jay, we can't hear you.
You're on mute.
This is much more
Jay.
There we go. Am I back?
Yes.
You're back.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what I did there. I'm switching to my headset here. Give me a sec. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Go for it, gold leader.
That's right. Set your
Now you're gone.
couple of things with respect to 19 matters. I know that we've had discussions at previous meetings about testing capacity, which is of course an issue of more than a bit of concern and angst amongst new pharmacy graduates. Just to reset the table on that, as you know, the NAPLEX is administered at Pearson VUE testing centers, and the Pearson VUE testing centers are open. Many of them are operating at reduced capacity. That capacity depends on what restrictions are in the particular location where the testing center is located. But they are open, and affiliated sites continue to come online. In fact, just the week before last, 2 additional centers came online in North Carolina, one at Appalachian State and one at Fayetteville State. As I've also reported to you all, ASHP has communicated with all of its residency programs that its accreditation requirement of licensure for residents has been extended to January 1st, which I think is created more than a bit of pressure relief for the residents and the like. And then finally, as you know, the MPJE, there is going to be a remote proctored version of the MPJE that will be available at the first of next month. And that's obviously a very good development because it quite literally cuts in half the number of seats that pharmacy licensure candidates need at Pearson VUE sites. So that's the that's sort of the lay. Oh, well, one other issue, Stacy is monitoring the week-to-week number of licenses by exams that are being issued. And the first 2 weeks here of our peak licensing season, the numbers actually reflect pretty much the same numbers that we've seen in previous years. So that's good news. It indicates that while maybe some candidates are having to go further away to take the exams, that folks are getting the exams done. Notwithstanding, there are some delays in the testing schedule and the like, and one way to perhaps mitigate some of those effects is to issue a waiver that would very clearly extend pharmacy intern status for pharmacy 2020 graduates through the end of the calendar year. You all know that, well, I'll just talk about the statutory and the rules-based definitions of a pharmacy intern refer to someone who is enrolled in an academic program. And obviously the grads are no longer enrolled in an academic program. But if someone is an intern, they are allowed to do all of the things that would constitute the practice of pharmacy as long as they are being supervised by a North Carolina licensed pharmacist. So what you have in front of you for your consideration and discussion, of course, is a proposed waiver that we could enact under our general waiver authority under General Statute 90-85.25 that would waive language in the statute and in the rules that limit intern status to someone who is enrolled in an approved academic program, and would apply then to graduates, 2020 graduates of pharmacy school would continue to retain an intern status so long as they've applied for licensure, so long as they are not someone who has had an application rejected by the board or is subject to a disciplinary action for the board. And the waiver would clarify that a pharmacy intern meeting the criteria of the waiver is under supervision so long as a North Carolina licensed pharmacist is physically located within the same facility as the pharmacy intern. That supervising physician is available for consultation at all times, and the supervising pharmacist accepts responsibility for reasonably ensuring the intern's compliance with laws, rules, and standards of care. So that is the discussion draft that's in front of you. I think it's page 3 of your materials under this agenda item. So, Madam President, I'll stop there and certainly more than happy to answer questions or facilitate the discussion in any way that you would like.
And I'll just open it up for board members that may have any types of questions for this topic. Jay, we lost you.
Me back.
Yes, you're back now.
Would like to go to Clint in case there's anything that I did not say that I should have with respect to the legal.
Something I heard and those all.
Clint, we can't understand you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got some sort of bandwidth thing going on, Clint. I'm going to have to fly solo on the legal part of this, I guess. Ashley, while we see if Clint can recover from whatever outage just occurred in Greensboro, they are open it up to the board members for any questions or comments, concerns.
Jay, it's not just Clint. I like I say, I'm only getting maybe about 20-25% of what's said. And like when you were talking then, I mean, I only know what you were talking about, not any details, because it just breaks up, it freezes. I guess it is bandwidth issues, but it's just not working. I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying, the whole of it, but I'm not getting hardly anything.
Yeah, we're getting everything from you. I think it's an issue on your end because it looks like it's different folks in different locations. So I think it's purely a function of what the bandwidth is on your end. Hey, Andy. Andy's sighing in disgust.
Maybe if you tighten your string a little bit, maybe, because we're in the boonies down here, so we don't have internet access no matter what AT&T says.
And I think AT&T or T-Mobile's had some sort of general issue over the past few days.
Well, mine's supposed to be. Well, I'm through a private internet provider, wireless, so it's anyway. Generally don't have issues, but I guess sure have got some today.
Same thing's going on in Western North Carolina.
You're coming in great, Bill.
I think Clint's dead.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. I do have so just to clarify on that, as long as the other pharmacist is in the building, they can perform all the acts of a pharmacist under this waiver. Is that accurate statement?
Yeah, Keith, the question's always been, and it comes up from time to time, even in the context of somebody enrolled in an academic program, what is supervision? And what the waiver spells out specifically is you have to have a North Carolina licensed pharmacist physically in the same space as the intern. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily hanging right over their shoulder the whole time. But the waiver makes clear they're physically in the same facility. They're available for consultation at any point the intern might need it, and that the supervising pharmacist is taking reasonable steps to ensure compliance with the law, the regs, and standards of care. But yeah, so long as they're in the building, it would work.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Are we waiting for Clint to get back on the line, Jay?
No, I don't know. Clint's making funny faces, but
Okay.
I'm sorry, but it's just not clear to me what the relationship is. It's not clear to me what the relationship is between lack of places to go and be tested and so is this for any pharmacy intern, or is this only for folks that are postgraduate awaiting licensure?
yeah, let me back up and try it again. So the rule definition of an intern is, among other things, someone who is enrolled in a school of pharmacy, right? Now, as a practical matter, in years past, the board has never taken the position that a graduate who is awaiting licensure, who's applied and is awaiting licensure, is not an intern, or we've never tried to take any action that would suggest that they roll back to something less than an intern. But the idea here is that there are some facilities, hospital-based primarily, that I've heard from, but in general, folks who have asked, look, I've got somebody who's here. What can they do? Are they still considered an intern while they are awaiting licensure? So the definition in the waiver bill would make clear that this is a, quote, waiver of the rule limitation that an intern be enrolled in a school, in an academic program, and that if they're a 2020 graduate, from now until the end of the calendar year, they continue to hold intern status so that they can be brought on board in any pharmacy in North Carolina and do all the things that would constitute the practice of pharmacy, as long as they're being supervised. Now, of course, as soon as they get licensed, they're free to not be under the supervision requirements.
How would this waiver not apply to a third-year pharmacy student? I'm sorry, a P2.
Well, by the definition of intern within our rules, it already applies to that. You don't need a waiver for somebody who's in pharmacy school, because the definition of an intern says that is someone who is enrolled in a school of pharmacy.
Okay, so essentially this waiver would allow for a longer leash for these interns?
I don't know if it's necessarily a longer leash, but a clear timeline that they can continue to do all the things that would constitute the practice of pharmacy through the end of this year, even though they're done with their academic program. So not a leash in what they can do, but a clarification as to how long they can continue to do it while they're awaiting licensure.
Okay, I apologize for being confused. So it only applies to folks that have graduated?
Correct.
Thank you. That was my heartburn.
Yep. And Ashley, in an earlier conversation, had brought up a question about if we may have folks, because of some testing delays, that are in an intern status for 5 or 6 months. One thing issue that Ashley brought up that was a very good one was, will we be monitoring those folks through the AOC, the criminal background monitoring, during this potentially long pendency of an intern status? And the answer to that is yes. Antoine has already made adjustments to what we report over to the company that does our AOC sweep. So we'll have, potentially up to a couple hundred folks who are interns. And again, that number is going to diminish over time as folks get in and take their test, but we are already running those folks through the AOC process. So very comfortable that, if somebody has applied for licensure and we're 4 months down the road, and God forbid they did something that is criminal in nature or that could affect their ability to get licensed, we're monitoring that daily, just like we do for everybody else that we license.
And another question. So this waiver automatically expires at the end of whoever determines that the COVID-19 crisis has ended?
No, on the terms of the waiver, it would expire at midnight on December 31st, 2020. Now, you guys could extend it further, but the notion is we're giving everybody plenty of time to get tested and licensed, and going into 2021, folks will be licensed and they'll be able to renew that license. Now, you could come back and extend it if you needed to when we got toward the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from any other board members? All right, Jay, do we need to vote on this, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the proposed waiver?
I'll make that motion. This is Andy.
Okay, we got a motion from Andy. Do we have a second?
Second, Bill Mixon.
Bill is seconding that. All in favor?
I'll make a motion.
Roll call.
Keith.
Yep, let me do the roll call, Ashley. So there's been a motion by Dr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. Mixon, to approve the proposed waiver concerning pharmacy internship status. And I'm now going to call the roll. Please indicate yay or nay. Ashley Duggins.
Aye.
Bill Mixon.
Aye.
Keith Vance.
Aye.
Wallace Nelson.
Aye.
We got you, Keith. Andy Bowman.
Ahoy.
Michelle Corvin.
Aye.
Thank you all. That motion passes. Madam President, if you like, I can move into the next COVID-related item.
Perfect.
Board staff, as we've discussed at some prior meetings, board staff, starting very early in the going, was getting inquiries about continuing education requirements for license renewal for 2021. Some of those inquiries have been of the nature, would you please just waive all CE requirements? But more often, which I suspect is not born necessarily of some COVID specific reason, but more often the inquiry has been, will the board consider, or has the board considered waiving the requirement in Rule 2201 that says that 5 of the 15 hours of continuing education for license renewal be live? Various callers, of course, have said, well, I've had a conference that was canceled because of the COVID crisis or the like. Since we're getting toward halfway through the year, I thought it was probably time to bring that back up. Missy has reported to me that she's getting more inquiries of that nature, so I thought I would bring it up. A couple of background points to consider on this. Number one is that do remember that the board has always considered online programs to be live if they are actually live and have an opportunity for immediate participation by the participants. So just as we're holding our board meetings through teleconference means any continuing education program that's actually live and through this type of technology, it does count, as it were, under our rule. And it's probably worth thinking a little bit too about a lot of local associations, for example, their sort of bread and butter, as it were, are live CE programs. So if they were waived, there would be some things perhaps to think through for those associations and others. And Andy, I know you may have some thoughts about if and how that might be something that would be of concern to our school of pharmacy partners. So I don't have a waiver drafted. What I wanted to put before you all is the general issue and get some guidance for staff about what your appetite is potentially for waiving this, or yay or nay, or anything about process. So Ashley, I'll stop with that.
Sure. Andy, I would like, if you don't mind, maybe your take on this, because I know this is your forte. Can you kind of explain what Campbell's doing for this situation?
Okay, so from a standpoint of our partners, the mutual drug CE in the spring had to be canceled from a standpoint of COVID. And so what we did was we platformed all of those programs live. And so people could still participate in those topics. Don't know what that will look like, particularly for that partner, mutual drug for the fall, but we'll be working with their team there to figure that out. And that's basically what we've done with any group or organization that has had a challenge getting groups of people together, we have adapted that. And I guess my comment from a pharmacist perspective, just taking off my CE hat here for a minute, I'm not worried about an impact financially on us. We're really not seeing any significant difference in the uptake of continuing education right now. But I would say that much like you guys, I have adapted since March what I'm doing with my CE. I know that the 4 conferences I was going to go to this year, I'm probably going to get to go to one of them. And so I have started already to do a lot of online continuing education that's available. And what I would say to folks that say, let's get rid of the 5 hours and this type of thing is, have you looked lately on the internet about how much live CE there is out there? I mean, there's a ton of things out there. And so I just think that I don't want to call people lazy in this, but at the same time, I don't know that people are really paying attention, not to mention what NCAP is doing. NCAP, which we allow credit for in North Carolina, I get emails from them all the time. They're doing a lot of virtual webinars and these types of things. I think that the response to pharmacists, and if other people have different opinions, please don't hesitate to speak up. I think there's plenty of CE out there in the state of North Carolina, virtually from a webinar perspective, and around the country. People just need to adapt and just understand that, yes, you're not probably going to get to go to a conference and sit there and get your live CE, but there's other ways to get it.
And I agree with you, Andy. I think there's actually more opportunities online than there ever has been.
Yep.
And I just think that pharmacists are going to have to take the time to kind of do the research, but now's the time. You've got 6 months to get that done, but there's so many opportunities online now. Personally, I think that keeping it the way it is the right thing to do.
And look, there's a lot of resources too, just with ACPE, which is the main accreditor of pharmacy CE. There are platforms there on their website where you can look up a topic. If you have a particular area or interest, you type in the keyword and it'll show you all the programs all over the country that are available. And frankly, I just think there's a lot of pharmacists out there that don't know that that exists. They've never had to use it or never used it because maybe their employer has always provided, an opportunity for them to get CE, but it's out there. It's a big business.
Jay, can I ask a question? Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I think perhaps there's a misunderstanding that just because you can tune in on your internet, on your computer at home, from home, that it satisfies the live requirement. Plus, if it's pre-recorded, I'm not sure how you would interact with it and whether that does or doesn't meet the definition of live CE.
Well, we're talking about that. So from a CE accreditation standpoint, I'm sorry, I don't want to bogart all the time here, but when we accredit a program, if it is accredited as home study, which will have an H in the serial number, then there is no communication between you and the speaker, and therefore it would not count as live. If there's an L in the serial number, it is considered live, and there would be a way, it's typically a webinar where you can communicate with the speaker, they can answer questions for you, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, ACPE is liberal enough with it that you could even show a pre-recorded CE program, and as long as the speaker's available at the end live to answer questions, it's still considered a live program. So that is already taken care of and vetted for us as pharmacists.
Good. Well, that's perhaps we have an education issue more than we have. I mean, communicating with pharmacists about what is and what is not available live.
And Bill, on that, if certainly if the decision or the guidance to staff today, or the decision is, no, we're gonna stick with the requirements as they exist. The first thing I'm going to do is get something up and out that A is going to point everybody to the long-standing FAQ we have on this about live. And Andy, I might also prevail upon you to maybe help me with including some of these resources that you've mentioned that can help direct folks to, so they can find these live, these online live programs.
Jay, is there a way to connect, like maybe on the website, to put like links to some of these national organizations that we know are offering that, so that way they can visit their website and see for themselves?
Yeah, I'm always a little bit careful about linking to specific organizations and specific programs, because then we open ourselves up to, well, if you're going to link so-and-so's, then you have to link mine too. That can kind of get out of control. But having said that, though, as Andy's mentioning, and I'm aware of it, for example, ACPE has that ability to go search for those sorts of things. I see Andy's bringing that up. I think Andy could help me come up with the right links to that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Andy,
here is I tried to share that. I'm gonna show you again. I showed you the front page. It's called Plan, and here is. Are y'all seeing it?
Yes. Well, we were.
Okay.
No, seeing you.
Okay, let's see if I can get it to come up here. I was getting. Oh, here we go. Application window. It's amazing how 1 minute you know what you're doing and the next minute you don't.
that describes my entire life.
Nothing like a computer to make you look dumb.
Here we go. Okay, so underneath the ACPE website, there is a link to Plan. Now, y'all see that?
Yep.
This tool, which probably 5% of pharmacists in the country know about, it literally, you can put in, your information here as to what you're interested in seeing. This pulls up from every CE provider in the country. There's like 400 CE providers in the country. So you can imagine, look at all the topics. I mean, you can go, and if you're thinking, man, I haven't really kept up with antibiotics, I need to go back and look, there's antimicrobial stewardship, whatever the topic is, it's all out there. So
Jay, are we able to link that? That's awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing certainly I could do would be, because NCAP is in our rule a specific accreditor of continuing education programs, I would certainly could also and would link to the appropriate NCAP page for their CE offering. So, I can have something ready and up on the website before I go home today to have all that sort of thing.
The other thing you can do, Jay, is you can we can get a link to Campbell and a link to UNC's CE page for what we have coming up over the next few months. So there might be something there that would pique somebody's interest. I think Wingate got out of the game. I don't think Wingate's involved with CE anymore, but obviously Campbell and UNC still are.
And certainly I could reach out. Be more than happy to reach out to Wingate and High Point as well to see if they had anything they want us to link to. So yeah, I'm happy to get right on that today and get that done. If it's the sense of the board, I don't think if it's the sense of the board that we don't need to have a waiver, that there are options. There's not a motion that we need. We would only need a motion and an official board action if you wanted to contemplate a waiver of some sort.
Is there any other questions from any other board members about that, or comments?
No, but I don't think we need a waiver. I think the information in the FAQ plus what Jay's going to work on today is adequate. The FAQ specifically talks about the live versus, what was the other category, Andy?
Home study.
Home. Okay.
Thank you, Andy, for all that information. I didn't even know that website had existed, so I appreciate that very much. And Jay, thank you for putting that on, because I think a lot of people will find that useful. But if everybody's good with keeping it the way it is with that additional information, is everybody good with that? I don't
And
hear.
let's just pause 1 second, Ashley, to make sure that nothing came in through the web chat on the live stream.
Nothing, Jay, has come through.
Okay, thanks, Antoine.
Uh-huh.
Antoine's like the voice of God during all the.
Now, Jay, do let us know. I mean, if there's, and of course, I'd probably find out about it just as readily as you would. But I mean, if a bunch of boards of pharmacy all of a sudden in the next month or two start making changes to what they're going to require, then certainly let us know. But I don't think it's necessary.
I think there have been a small handful, Andy, of other boards that have made some tweaks to CE requirements, but it's not been a preponderance of the board, nor has there even necessarily been any real consistency. Because as you know, Andy, some boards have some very idiosyncratic requirements, and I think more of what I've seen in terms of changes to CE requirement are boards that have a lot of specific topic requirements.
Right.
And they have some concern about the ability to put on enough programs geared toward that idiosyncratic state-specific topic requirement more than any sort of general waiver. But no doubt, Andy, I'll keep you guys posted if it looks like we're going against the grain in some way. And do remember this too, in terms of out-of-state pharmacies, remember that under our rule, a pharmacist that holds a North Carolina permit but lives outside of the state and only practiced outside of the state during the year, as long as they've satisfied their home state CE requirements, we don't require them to also satisfy our particular requirements if they're different from the home state. So I'm just Andy made me remember that we would not be putting out-of-state North Carolina license holders who don't practice here in any sort of disadvantage or problem with this.
It sounds like there's not any further discussion on that, Jay, unless anybody else has anything. So I guess we can move on to Missy's update.
Yeah, I'd like to turn it over to Missy. She's going to give you guys an update about how work from home license and permit processing has been going. So Missy, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. So, this isn't a formal update. It's just kind of a temperature taking function. I mean, we've been working at home for 3 months, about 3 months now. And so I just kind of wanted to give the board a heads up that, license applications are moving through, give you some hard data to see that that's actually happening. As you know, we also have a waiver in place for no permit meetings. That's been helpful in, not allowing people to, people can't come to the board. So the pharmacies and the DMEs are still getting permitted, which is, fantastic. So, as you can see from your tab that, there's been 38 exam candidates licensed, 65 reciprocity. So that's a total of 103 pharmacists have been licensed during these 3 months. And this is only from March to June. So, that's pretty good. And then the technicians are 782. And that's a lot. Debbie Stump is in charge of technicians, and she's been doing a great job of getting those moving through because everybody needs more help in pharmacies. And then the pharmacies that have been permitted, there's 64 of them, and DME is 26. So things are moving really well. Everybody's doing really good at home. They are, making sure that things are moving back and forth. And these are just the completed applications. I mean, this doesn't even really take into account the back and forth that licensing specialists have with the candidates and permits, the applicants. So there is a lot of work going on. And I just wanted to give you a heads up about, how that's going. So all in all, everything's going really well. And, I didn't do any of these applications. This is all a product of my team. They're doing a great job at home. So I just wanted to, let you guys know over the 3 months we've been working at home, things are moving quite well. I'm happy to entertain any questions you guys have.
Obviously, we expect to see those pharmacist exam numbers to go up now that we are in the meat of the licensing period. But board members and Missy knows this. The feedback I've been getting from folks out in the field is that Missy and her team really are projecting a very seamless picture to the outside world, that when folks are filing their applications and asking their questions and the responses that are coming in, it's as if we're operating here in the office as we normally would. So that's a tremendous credit to Missy and her team, and to Antoine for having us technologically situated where these things can occur. But board members, we're not doing this just to pat ourselves on the back, but we know it's important for you guys to understand, so that if you get questions or if you've heard feedback that we need to be aware of, just to let you know that everybody working from home is not ideal, but it continues to be productive.
You guys rock. All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's any questions. Thank you, Missy. You're awesome, and your team is amazing. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Missy has been in the office more often the past couple of weeks, so the slope of my going completely insane has shallowed out somewhat. There's another human being here to interact with from time to time. Thanks, Missy.
Well, good.
Happy to help.
You can stop all your medications now, Jay. That's great.
That's HIPAA protected information. You shouldn't be disclosing that. Well, Madam President, I'd be happy to move on to the next item if you'd like.
Absolutely.
This is not a new issue.
Ashley, Jay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is Wallace again. I've shut everything down, brought everything back up. It's just pretty much, I get so little of what is actually said. I don't know if y'all can hear me, but
we can.
It's you can?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. I don't know why it's only working one way, but, I don't know what's going on. I've moved around to routers and tried to hook up through my telephone and everything, and it's,
I think what we're going to have to do, Wallace, is just we're going to have to let you come to the Carolina Inn and do all meetings from the Carolina Inn from now on. I don't know if you heard that.
It sounds like a plan.
funny he heard that.
Yeah, that's, we'll keep working on it on our end, Wallace.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep trying on this end too, but just to make y'all aware.
The next item is not a new item, and there are no new materials. I just want to continue putting in the agenda as just a reminder about the FDA's memorandum of understanding, the draft that is out there. Michelle, I know this is probably an item you're like, what is this? It's a fairly a lot of moving parts about implementation of a statute that was enacted at the end of 2013 called the Drug Quality and Security Act. And this ties into regulation of compounding pharmacy, how that's split up between the federal authorities, the FDA principally, and the state boards of pharmacy. And this is something, Michelle, that certainly we'll be discussing more at the retreat in September. So we can give you an in-depth, but I did just want to bring it back up so that since we last met 3 weeks ago, if there were taking a look at this, if there were any questions that had come up that I could answer, or anything about the MOU that any of the members would want me to go run down as we continue to head toward more substantial discussion at the retreat. And there may not be any. I just want to make sure it stays in front of us. And Ashley, I'm not hearing anything. Antoine, is anything coming in over the live stream chat?
Yeah, everything's pretty clear.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll keep organizing. The immediate issue, as far as staff is concerned, is I continue to have discussions with NABP about when and how they're going to bring up the pilot study of their compounding pharmacy data collection program. As we discussed at the last meeting, in my view, that's a very central piece to our ability to make an informed decision about entering into this MOU. Is how is that program going to work? Is it going to be efficient, and is that going to allow us to be able to turf out some of these data collection and reporting things, and so that it doesn't become a serious strain on the field staff time to collect it. So I continue to be in discussion with the NABP, and also specifically expect that by the end of August, at the conclusion of the annual NABP Executive Committee retreat, that I'll have some more specific and concrete things to report. And so that'll put us, the timing of that would be really good going into the September retreat.
Jay, what plans are there to do some testing of the data collection?
Well,
stakeholders like other compounding pharmacists.
Right. I mean, that's exactly the issue, Bill, is that NABP is going to stand up this prototype of a data collection thing. The key will be, in terms of participation, A, does our board want to participate in, and B, that pharmacies have e-profile numbers, which I think, as you know, Bill, NABP now has stood up the ability for pharmacies to as easily obtain an e-profile number as it is for individuals to do that. And Missy and I are going to be doing some work over the summer to communicate to all pharmacies that they are going to need to have their own, which we already have a rule that requires that. We haven't been enforcing it. But we're going to have some communication out to remind pharmacies they're going to need to get an e-profile number in order to renew for 2021. But having said all that, Bill, that's the question, right? NABP stands this up, and if we can participate in our pharmacies, that's going to tell us the lessons. What is the ease of reporting this data, et cetera, et cetera. I'm optimistic about that, but no way to know until NABP gets it off the ground. But I would like us to be one of the states that participates in the pilot program. We've always been good about getting out in front of these things anyway, but I think that if we do that, that gives us the direct experience and knowledge, not only ourselves as the board members, but the pharmacies in our state, to be able to give us feedback on that and make changes that are necessary if they are necessary, and to make an intelligent and thoughtful decision about entering into the MOU.
Well, I personally want to see some beta testing of the data collection.
Right.
Because, the questions that are asked about what's dispensed where.
Yep.
Pharmacies they have to be able to easily count that. No
question about it. That the way the requests are presented, in terms of their clarity and ease of calculation for the pharmacies, that's absolutely right, Bill. If it turns into sort of a guessing game, and I don't think it'll be a guessing game, but it turns into pharmacies aren't sure about how it is they're supposed to report numbers. Yeah, that would be a bad situation.
Yeah. You can run through your database and look at patients and their home address that's listed in the computer. That doesn't necessarily mean that preparation actually got in a UPS or USPS or FedEx box and went across state lines.
That's right. Could very well have been picked up at the pharmacy, in which case it wouldn't count in the interstate numerator of the calculation. That's exactly right.
We have a lot of people in this part of the state that come from out of state 4, 5, 6 months out of the year.
Yep. And the good thing is that the FDA is very clear in the MOU that those transactions, Bill, would not be part of the interstate numerator for the calculation. But you're right. Is it going to be sufficiently user-friendly for pharmacies to be able to report that? That's a question. And another thing, remember too, Bill, is one of the nice things about this draft of the MOU is that FDA has made it very clear that even if a pharmacy correctly reporting data or easily reporting data, that the calculation says that more than 50% of the compounded prescriptions moved interstate, that does not at all mean that the pharmacy has to scale back in any way. All that means is that if a pharmacy exceeds that 0.5 ratio, there's certain information that has to be reported to FDA, but it does not come with any obligation on the pharmacy to scale back. In other words, shipping more, if we become an MOU participant state, North Carolina pharmacies that ship, which is probably not going to be very many, let's face it, but if there are a handful of pharmacies in North Carolina that do ship more than 50% of their compounded product interstate, that's fine. They don't have to scale that back. Conversely, though, if we are not an MOU participant and a North Carolina pharmacy ships more than 5% of its compounded product interstate, then the FDA could come in and force them to stop shipping more than that amount. So there are a lot of, to your point, if it works, Bill, if it's a data collection method that is consistent and not onerous, the advantages to in-state compounding pharmacy operations, I think, are rather obvious. But the key is, that's fine in theory. Is it going to work practically? You're right, Bill. That's the question.
I would be happy to be part of a task force if that's an opportunity at the NABP data collection level.
Yeah, I think what we're going to make sure, as soon as we're presented with an opportunity to participate in the pilot project, Bill, I'll make sure we get you looped in on all of that.
Thank you.
Happy to discuss anything more if there is anything on this. Hearing none. Ashley, would you like me to move on to the next?
Yes, that'd be great.
A very quick legislative update. As you all know, there are two bills, well, really more than two bills, but substantively two bills that are wending their way in various ways through the legislature right now. The first is Senate 717 and its mirror House 1053. It does look like Senate 717 is the actual vehicle. That's the military, that's the statute that would make certain changes in the military occupational licensure status or a program. None, as we discussed back in June, none of the changes that would be wrought by that bill, if it passes, are of concern to staff. It clarifies certain deadlines, which we are more than meeting because of the terrific process that Missy has set up through the licensing department. When we get these military occupational licensure requests or military spouses, those are very, very rapidly moving through our system. So there's no concern there. There would be certain additional information that we would need to add to our website, which is fine. And there would be an additional annual reporting requirement, which in fact we are already doing, as mentioned last time, because we anticipated we were going to have to. So no staff concern about that bill. As an update from last month, the Senate version has cleared the Senate unanimously, and it's sitting in the House. I fully expect it's going to pass, but no concerns from a staff standpoint. The other bill that we're watching is the Universal License Recognition Act, Senate 773. As we discussed last month, there's a slight amount of heartburn that I have about that, in that concern that it could unintentionally get in the way of certain aspects of the ELTP program, which we already used. But again, I think the overall gist of this bill is it's a way of forcing occupational licensing boards in North Carolina that do not already have some form of licensure or reciprocity, that this imposes one upon them. Of course, we have that, as you all know, through the NABP program, and the bill makes clear that it's not intended to invalidate any aspect of an existing reciprocity agreement. So we continue to watch that. As right now, it's sitting in the Senate Rules Committee. Generally speaking, rules is where bills go to sit and not move. Although in the past couple of years, that's really become more of a way that Senate leadership consolidates their oversight of bills and make decisions about putting them through the regular process. Nothing has happened on that bill so far. I don't know. My sense is that if something doesn't happen on it pretty quickly, nothing probably will this term. But I do expect, if it doesn't, some version of this to come back up during the long session next year. But I will just, I'll keep you guys posted on this, and Clint's legislative folks also keep me up to date on what's moving through the legislature. So not really a lot, no decisions that we need to make on that, just an update.
Thank you, Jay.
Sure. Clint, anything I left out on that you may know?
Not a thing.
We can move then quickly, Ashley, to the rulemaking. Clint can embellish if he needs to, but just to say that the drug preservation, COVID-19 drug preservation rule that, of course, you passed at the June meeting is now over at the RRC. And I think, isn't it correct, Clint, that meeting is later this week?
It's Thursday, and the Med Board and the Nursing Board's version of the same rule are also on the agenda.
So if that temporary rule clears the Rules Review Commission, and we don't have any reason to think that it will not, that would put the temporary rule in place, I think, Clinton, you say through the end of March of 2020. So 2021. So we will continue to monitor the need for this rule, but if it looks like there's going to be a need to continue the rule because of pandemic issues extending past the end of March of 2021, I think, Clint, am I not correct, that we would need to begin moving on that as a permanent rulemaking at the October meeting?
That's right. We probably should move after a late Labor Day to make sure it gets done in time.
So we'll keep you guys posted on that. Related, if you're not aware, members, you all well recall the reasons why the Secretary of Health and Human Services asked us to pass this rule. You may have seen that this week that the FDA has removed its emergency use authorization for hydroxychloroquine in the treatment of COVID because the data has shown that it is A, not effective, and B, probably not safe either because of the cardiotoxicity aspects of the drug. So the interesting, sort of one of the interesting things about all this is that, of course, as you know, we put in this rule, among other things, to make sure that those who are receiving hydroxychloroquine to treat for conditions that it has been proven safe and effective to treat, that they would continue to have access to that. What states are now running into is they went out and acquired tons and tons of hydroxychloroquine and are now sitting on that and aren't sure what to do with it. So I have been in contact with Amanda Fuller-Moore over at Department of Health and Human Services, which is sitting on 1 million plus doses of hydroxychloroquine. And I've been talking with Amanda. They're obviously trying to figure out what can be done with this to perhaps get this drug donated in ways that patients who take it for lupus or other autoimmune diseases might be able to have access to that. So I'm working with her, and we're looping in the North Carolina Association of Free and Charitable Clinics, NC Medicist, other similar organizations to see if we can do some good with that medication that's sitting there. And as always, I appreciate Amanda, her expertise and her proactive steps on this and so many other issues. So the other rule we had, of course, that we passed last time were the procedural changes for our hearings. And Clint, I think those are coming up at RRC next month.
That's right.
And I don't think we've received any technical change requests on that yet.
Nope.
That's the one, board members, we expect to probably get a fair number of technical change requests because it's those hearing process rules are lawyers' playground. And but we will work through those as we always do. And if there's anything substantively problematic, we'll, of course, get back to you on that. As always, thanks to Clint, who continues to maintain an incredibly positive and productive working relationship with the RRC staff over there. They love them some Clint Pinion, I can tell you.
They're the only people I'm positive with.
So that's it for rulemaking, Ashley.
Okay, perfect.
Next, I think
Hey,
Jay. I'm sorry.
This is Wallace.
Hey.
That FDA action yesterday, does that affect any of this in any way, shape, or form? You know, when they changed some stuff, I didn't study it in any detail, but when the FDA did some type of a statement yesterday or changed something related to hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, what they said, they had issued something called an emergency use authorization for specifically. Well, let me back up and say everybody knows that, right? Drugs generally can only be approved by the FDA for an indication that the manufacturer has proven that it is safe and effective, right? I mean, there's off-label prescribing of medications all the time. That's not illegal. But what FDA had done was issue something called an emergency use authorization, which is a quasi-approval by the FDA to say, we are specifically giving a form of okay for the prescribing of hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID patients. What they did yesterday, Wallace, was withdraw that because the data, has shown that it's not effective in the treatment of COVID. In fact, interestingly, there's another set of data coming out to show that it, when used in combination with some of the other drugs that are being looked at as potential COVID treatment, it appears to make those other drugs less effective. So there's the effectiveness was not being shown, or the effectiveness is not being shown, and B, the data tended to show that in COVID patient cohorts taking hydroxychloroquine, there are safety concerns. So the FDA has said we're withdrawing that emergency use authorization. Now, Wallace, that doesn't mean then that a prescriber is prohibited from prescribing hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of COVID, but that would now be strictly an off-label use of the drug. So as a practical matter, Wallace, it's very likely to reduce the number of prescriptions that are going to be issued for that drug for the treatment of COVID. But it doesn't affect our rule in any way.
Okay.
All right, Jay, we're going to hand it over to JP.
Yeah, I think JP is going to give us the financial update.
The man of the hour and his new hairdo.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I do have high hopes of getting a haircut at some point this summer. So.
I've tried to tell him he gives him a certain devil-may-care look about him, but he doesn't seem to be convincing him.
I'll talk to you. I do. I'm good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've resisted the clippers thus far, but I'm not sure if the heat continues to climb, how much longer I can hold out. So
I don't know. It's kind of a Hollywood look. I mean, I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's something.
Be easy there, Andy, or I'm gonna have to get Rhonda involved in the HR aspects of this. Come on.
I'll keep this brief. As we all know, with the way things are working these days, with most businesses still, despite the restrictions easing a bit, the pandemic has definitely made our operating expenses less, which is a good problem to have. And that, we always conservatively forecast our revenues as well, and we've surpassed those for the year. As the memo states, with the surplus of revenues and sort of the less operating expenses combined, we're looking very healthy this year. I will say that staff has gone above and beyond in the last couple of weeks. We are making a great push here at the end to get as many things done by the end of this fiscal year, which is coming up at the end of this month, June 30th. And hopefully we'll take advantage of this surplus and get some more of our projects that we had planned to get done this year actually completed by June 30th. That said, we should still finish the year much healthier than expected, which is nothing new. As Jay can point out, the board always does a great job of coming in well under budget every year. And that's no different this year. Perhaps even better with the pandemic, the way it's played out thus far. That said, who knows what next fiscal year will bring us, right? This could all come back to bite us, and we could have some unforeseen things next year that cause us to have a higher operating expenses than we've budgeted. But we did pass that budget at the last meeting. And again, I think it's a very conservative budget that we passed. I don't see us having any unforeseen hiccups next year, really. That said, not much to report. Like I said, this month we're very healthy, and staff is trying to get some big projects done before the end of this month. But we're on track to finish the year well. Audit is scheduled for August, and as we all know, all our state reports are due by October. So with our switching to the 6/30 year end as we did last year, that will help get us all our state reports done at once. But no challenges seen in the upcoming audit, that's for sure. It's always my goal to get our auditors completed within a few days. So I don't see that being any different this year. Even if they can't come into the office for whatever reason, we all have the digital means now to get them whatever they need. So that's about it for me, unless there's any questions, concerns. All right, I'll turn it back over to Jay and Ashley.
Thank you, JP.
Thanks.
Thanks, JP. And Michelle, what JP was referring to is we did pass our fiscal year 20-21 budget last month because our fiscal year begins July 1st. And we adopted some particularly conservative estimates in that budget for the next year because we just don't know if and to what extent the COVID impacts on the business community may impact our revenue streams. Will we see fewer pharmacies renewing their permits or fewer new pharmacies opening, that sort of thing? So we've taken a very careful and thoughtful approach to that. And we do give Michelle an update every month that we have a board meeting. So if we identify any trends that we did not anticipate, the board becomes aware of that immediately, and certainly the Budget and Finance Committee can step in at any point and reconvene and make adjustments to the budget as we need to. So, I think next up will be Investigative Statistics, and I think that Crystal is going to be presenting that this month. Ellen's nodding, so I guess I was right on that.
Yep, it's me. I don't know who she is that.
Well, apparently you're showing Zac Efron on your screen.
That's not me.
That's my feeble attempt to find a famous person in Hollywood that looked a little bit like JP today.
All right. Easy, Tiger.
I'm like, that's not me. I didn't do that.
Yeah. I'm not sure I see the resemblance, but I'll take the compliment.
Oh, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? I will go over the stats. So far this year, we have assigned out 143 cases. 43 of those have been procedural legal, 30 have been AOC cases, 22 inspection follow-ups, 3 incident reports, 25 error cases, 3 substance abuse, and 2 that fit in our other category. So you can kind of see how that's spread out so far this year. And so far this year, we have also had 22 surrenders, 17 were technicians. We've had 1 DME, one nurse practitioner, dispensing registration, and a pharmacist, or 3 pharmacists. I apologize. So that's kind of what we have for the statistics. Do you guys have any questions for me?
And Michelle, for you, there are, I know you're probably looking at this pie chart and these different types of cases and probably quite reasonably say, what the heck are those different things? The categories are defined there, but what we do for the board each month, Michelle, is trying to keep you generally abreast of the inspection or the investigation load. I mean, is it higher? Is it lower? Is it sort of typical of what we see from year to year? And we break them into these categories, and they're not perfect distinctions. I mean, some cases present more than one type, but to give the board members an idea of the complaints that come in, things other than routine inspections. What are we seeing? Is there a trend that we're seeing all of a sudden, for some reason, more of a particular type of complaint or investigation than we normally have? So we break those into those categories to give you a sort of the 50,000 foot view of what the investigative docket is. And then the board members have asked also to see, well, how many and what category do our surrenders fall in? As I'm sure know, Michelle, that sometimes during the course of an investigation, a holder of a license or a permit or registration may either bring up the idea of surrendering their credential, or we may ask for that depending on the particular circumstances at issue. We do have, Michelle, policies and procedures that we follow about when we ask someone for a surrender of their license or their registration or their permit. And each time that we are contemplating asking that, there's an internal vetting process that we go through because what we do want is the board members to know that we are being consistent and thoughtful in both the types of cases in which board staff may ask for a surrender and what circumstances we would do that. So that's why we're reporting all of this data. Certainly questions or comments for Crystal on any of this?
Or anything else related to investigations?
Crystal, these numbers look to be roughly the same as the same period last year, would you say? When you compare
they're a little down. We have been receiving fewer cases over the last couple of months. We're not getting as many of the AOC cases as we normally get, especially DWIs, because I guess a lot of people just aren't out and about because restaurants and bars are not open right now, so we're not getting those DWIs. But we are our caseload is a lot lower than it was this time last year.
Can you give us any information on what the 2 other cases might involve, just in general terms?
What 2 other cases?
The ones that are in the other category of the pie wedge.
Oh, I don't have that information in front of me. I'd have to pull that data for you. I just have the categories. I don't have the list of the cases. But the other category kind of is like it's our catch-all. It kind of catches anything that doesn't fit into that those defined, error, diversion, procedural, legal, inspection, follow-up. So that's kind of the other category is kind of our catch-all. That helps.
We could for next.
I can pull that data for you for next month and get that.
Right. Yeah, it's more curiosity than anything.
Yeah, we can get that information for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Crystal.
Thanks.
Ashley, moving into next, board member retreat planning. As everybody knows, we firmed up, and thank you all for your responses. We firmed up the retreat, depending, of course, on pandemic. distancing and the like. But the plan is that we will gather in Chapel Hill at the Carolina Inn the evening of September 20th. If you wish to, no, board members don't have to come in that evening, but we'll gather up. There'll be nothing formal that night. And then on Monday, September 21st, we will have our training. Clint will put on the required statutory training for all members, and Michelle, hopefully that will start putting some cohesiveness to board participation and responsibility and the like. And we will do all of our training, required training on that day. And then Tuesday, September 22nd will be two things. One will be doing the usual monthly meeting things that we need to do, the financial reports, the anything on the consent agenda and the like. And then we will move into retreat items. So again, a reminder to board members, if there are specific things that you want to discuss at the retreat, please get those to me, and we'll keep that list. I know that one of the items on the retreat is going to be discussion of the MOU. I think it would probably be a good time to sort of catch everybody up on the work of the telepharmacy committee to date, where we are, what kinds of things that committee is going to be considering going forward, and maybe what some action plans are going to be. And also there are going to be some things from the staff point of view we'd like to bring up, including one thing we'll be looking back at that NABP review of our operations that we commissioned back in 2015, and talking about the things we implemented, some of the things we didn't, and whether there might be some efficiency opportunities in staff operations. So we've already got some good stuff that we're going to discuss, but please, anything at all that you guys would like to add to that, get that to me. So, and again, we'll just play it out as we can, depending on pandemic issues. But I'm got my fingers crossed that we'll be good at that point.
And Jay, are we going to discuss I don't know if I didn't see that on the agenda. I know it's going to be talked about what the consensus was for next month's meeting.
Yeah, we can. Why don't we just go ahead and talk about that now? This is be a good a time as any. I sent out obviously an update to you all, about what do you want to do in terms of meeting next month. I mean, from my standpoint, as I communicated yesterday, the numbers in terms of infection rates, all the things that the metrics that are being monitored are not going in the direction that any of us would like for them to be going. And so I don't foresee between now and 4 weeks from now any material change in terms of the recommendations, in terms of distancing, keeping in-person meetings to a minimum and the like. My suggestion would be that we go ahead and plan for next month to have this meeting using the teleconference technology again, recognizing we may need to do a little bit more homework on that to make it work operationally. That we can have the teleconference meeting next month. We will not meet in August because we never have, unless there was some reason we needed to have an emergency meeting, and then plan to convene again in person in September. That would be my recommendation. In terms of getting together, if you wanted to get together, Antoine and Kristen and I have talked about going into the boardroom and sort of marking off distancing, but the truth of the matter is I don't see how we could get the board members in the board meeting room with appropriate distancing, much less get staff members in there that would need to be in there as well. So, I mean, we could work on that, but that's my recommendation.
Jay, personally, I feel that since we've got this option of the teleconference with the video, I don't see a need that we need to do that. I think that we need to, hopefully September we'll get to meet in person, but this seems to be working out pretty well today. So I think that's a great idea. I don't know what other board members think about that. it looks like everybody might be fine with that.
Okay. Well, that's what we'll plan to do then. And certainly if things change in a very positive direction, we can reconsider that. But why don't we go with that plan for now then?
Sounds good.
So that would mean our next meeting will be the 51st anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. I'll be sure we work that into the agenda in some appropriate way. NAVP District 3 virtual meeting. I reported last week that decision has been made. Cindy, thank goodness, is taking a well-deserved vacation this week, but she's been working on, and we think we firmed up an agenda. We're probably going to be using a Zoom platform on that. Again, it's going to be a very abbreviated agenda just to get through the key business issues that the boards of pharmacy and that any AACP schools may have for that meeting. It'll be a one-day thing, Zoom platform. We're comfortable with the agenda we've got. Be on the lookout. Shortly after the 1st of next month, we will be sending out information about registering for the District 3 meeting. Will not be any payment or any registration fee. Of course, none of you would have to cover that if there were. But we're going to need to do a registration so that we will know what capacity we're going to need for our online platform and the like. And again, probably going to be Zoom, and we're working on those issues in the background. So again, just make sure your calendars are marked for Wednesday, August 12th. The plan is that meeting will convene at 10. There will be some breaks in there, and I imagine that meeting will conclude by 2:30 or so in the afternoon at the latest. So more to come on that. There are no reports to the board from committees or anything. Going back to Board of Pharmacy committees, again, I think it makes sense to me, Ashley, probably September is we'll get a reset on what the committees that you appointed last month are going to do, and maybe start things moving along after we've had our general planning session, if that makes sense.
Jay, do we need to make any adjustments with our new public member and so forth?
Yes, that's the other piece I had on there is if you go back and look at the minutes, and I'm going to go back to that, which confirms, which will remind everybody of the committee compositions. I'm pulling that up now, what the committees are. So Mr. Graves had been appointed to the Budget and Finance Committee. He was also appointed as our representative, one of our representatives to the North Carolina our Professionals Health Program board representative. So we can consider, obviously, Mr. Graves cannot be on the Budget and Finance Committee anymore. He can continue to be a designee to the Professionals Health Program Board of Directors, because we are allowed to appoint whomever we wish, and that has included former board members in the past. But Michelle, we have our standing committees are Budget and Finance, Opioid Crisis Committee, which is a committee that sort of gets together periodically and talks about what kinds of programs or things that we might do to be an education source more than anything else on opioid use and abuse. The Telepharmacy Committee, which is working on some very heavy lifting issues about potential expansion of our rules to facilitate certain types of telepharmacy. And then there's the Device and Medical Equipment Committee, which I will honestly, Michelle, were I you, that would not be one I would be champing at the bit to become a part of. A, because it really doesn't do very much, and B, you might want to do that one eventually, but probably not right out of the gate. But Michelle, are there? We'd certainly like to get you on board committees. Are there any of these that sound particularly interesting to you?
So whatever it's budget and finance, opioid, telephone, and DME.
Right. So the
So
Budget and
this one?
Finance Committee, the Opioid Crisis Committee, well, actually, that one's, we can't add anybody to that. So, because that would get us in a majority. So it would be budget and finance would be the one that we could appoint you to, which if you're, I know that's hardly exciting, but I would say though that as a new board member, being on the Budget and Finance Committee would give you a particularly deep look into board operations and the like. And that committee is next scheduled to reconvene in January to do sort of any mid-course corrections that we may need to do.
Okay, that's fine.
Madam President, this is at your discretion purely, but if you wanted, you certainly could appoint Michelle to the Budget and Finance Committee to replace Mr. Graves.
I agree with that 100%.
We need a second or a vote?
No, that's a presidential appointment, so we're good with that.
Thank you, Michelle, for being willing to serve on that committee.
Madam President, is there anyone that has a budding interest to be involved with the North Carolina Physician or Health Professionals Program?
Well, I believe that Bill is also on that now, right, Bill? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, which committee, Ashley?
That would be the PHP committee, right? Didn't you also ask to be a part of that?
I think I did, yes.
I'm pulling that back up. I'm sorry, I closed that out. Yes, so our designees to the North Carolina Professionals Health Program Board of Directors are Mr. Graves and Mr. Mixon.
So do we have anybody else that would be interested in that, or are we good? Do we need to, I mean, we can keep Robert on there if he desires to do that, correct, Jay?
You can. You certainly can. That's entirely the prerogative of the board.
I am happy to serve in that position to represent the board and also be a conduit to the board of to the School of Pharmacy at Campbell. There are some, connections there as well to help students get access to care if necessary. But whatever's the will of the board, but I'm willing to do that.
I think that's a great idea, Andy. I think that ties in the pharmacy schools nicely with that. So I'm good with that.
Okay. So our designees to the NCPHP Board of Directors will be Dr. Bowman and Mr. Mixon.
And that would be the only changes we would need to make.
Correct. Michelle, I think I may have heard, I'm not sure if, Michelle, were you trying to make a comment? I want to make sure we don't move off too quickly on that.
I just had one quick question about what is the relationship with all of the different schools of pharmacies, and how many are there?
Great question. So there's not a formal relationship as such between the board and the schools, but we look to our school partners often to provide input on different things. That there are now 4 schools of pharmacy in North Carolina, Michelle. Of course, UNC, Campbell University, Wingate University, which their first graduating class was the class of 2008. And High Point University now has begun a pharmacy program, and High Point graduated its first class this May. And I think, Ellen, am I right? I think it was 60 members of the inaugural class at High Point.
It was 50.
50. So, Michelle, High Point is in the process of getting its final accreditation from the American Council for Pharmacy Education. It's due to COVID restrictions, its final accreditation visit was postponed, so it's still technically a candidate school of pharmacy, but every expectation is that it will receive its final accreditation here sometime in the very near future. But yeah, for the pharmacy now.
All right. Any other questions about anything related to committees? All right, Jay, you just let me know what you need to do with the next part, please.
Well, right. Consent agenda is there are no items on the consent agenda, so we are no need to do that. That would leave then the only agenda matters is we do need to have a closed session to discuss a personnel matter and potential summary suspensions, but certainly would like to pause to make sure there aren't any comments or questions coming in over the live stream, and anything else before we move into a closed session.
Hey, Jay, there are no comments right now.
Thanks, Antoine.
Jay, one question, kind of a piece of new business that I have, and maybe Ashley and Keith can chime in on this. I've gotten some feedback not only from pharmacists, but also from a patient recently about difficulty getting access to controlled substances at pharmacies in North Carolina. That from a standpoint of, whether it be, I guess, from a manufacturing perspective or from a wholesaler perspective, not only independents, but chain pharmacies have, I assume because of the opioid crisis, they've tightened up on how much pharmacies can order. And there's been some situations where patients with cancer and so forth that need pain control urgently have had challenges getting access to pain medications. Have you gotten any calls on that, Ashley and Keith? Is that an accurate statement? I'm just concerned about people not being able to get access to medication.
I can speak to that a moment. I certainly see that is a concern. Some of the not necessarily manufacturing issues, but the wholesale issues, there's been some concerns to that. Personally, I haven't had any situations where that's affected, but overall, I can see the landscape of that changing quite a bit and getting more and more difficult. But personally, I haven't had any of my patients that have had, problems with that. Keith, I don't know how you can speak to that.
Keith, anything?
I've heard several folks, pharmacies in, especially in the central part of the state, and that probably one of the hot spots of, that are places that have been designated hot spots for opioid use. They've had a terrible time getting medications for their, for long-term patients who have legitimate needs. And I do know that there are certain wholesalers who have taken a very conservative stance, and that varies from wholesaler to wholesaler. But a lot of that is probably wholesaler driven.
Yeah, Andy, I've gotten a handful of calls on that issue, and the advice I've been giving is sort of that the Board of Pharmacy does not, obviously, we don't regulate prescription drug wholesalers.
Right.
So we do not have any, nor am I aware of any law that would command a wholesaler to sell or not sell any particular amount of a controlled substance or anything else to a pharmacy. They are entitled, as any business would be, to set their own policies about how they sell those things and under what circumstances. So, yeah, I've gotten some of the anecdotal stuff as well. It's, as always with anecdotal reports, it's hard to know what's real and what is not highly specific to a particular individual. But my advice has been that if folks have a concern and think that there's a potential legal issue involving wholesalers, that they should communicate that with Jeremy Evans over at the Food and Drug Safety Division of the Department of Agriculture, which does regulate wholesalers. But I think this is really an issue probably of all wholesalers, like everybody else, who are trying to set policies to be responsible in the opioid crisis, that are probably having some challenges and trying to adjust, and maybe are overcorrecting in certain ways. But I think it's a policy driven issue at the wholesaler level.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, does anybody else have any other business to discuss? All right.
Can we take a quick break before we move into closed session?
Sure. In fact, if we want, maybe the thing to do would be if we could entertain a motion to move into closed session, confirm that. And once that's confirmed, maybe take a 10-minute break and then reconvene.
I think that's great if that's good with everyone else. All right, so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to close into closed session.
Oh, that was Keith that sounded like.
It was.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so we got a motion from Keith, seconded by Mr. Mixon, to move into closed session. I'll call the roll real quick. Yay or nay? Ashley?
Yes.
Bill?
Yay.
Keith? Keith giving a thumbs up. Wallace?
No, that was me.
Yes.
Okay. Wallace is yes. Andy?
Ahoy.
I heard Keith and Michelle.
I'll say yes.
Okay, we have that motion is approved, so we will move into a closed session. And so, Ashley, 11:50, everybody pick back. So everybody leave your connections open, and we will reconvene at 11:50. And Antoine will turn off the live stream now, and we'll come back in 10 minutes and do our closed session matter. So staff members, board staff members who don't need to be in the closed session, you're free to go about your day. Rhonda looks terribly disappointed about that.